Hey guys, welcome to the Heroic Feng the Accursed Encounter Guide, second boss in mogu'shan Vaults. We'll actually be going over both the normal and heroic mode encounters of this so you can make use of it even if you aren't working on the heroic encounter yet. My name, as always, is World Boss.
Hey, I'm Meows, the resident Resto Druid and healing lead of Bless the Martyr.
Alright guys, well the first thing about this encounter that I want to go over is the two crystals. They are for tank use. One of them is Shroud of Reversal. Its main use is actually going to be up your DPS. The tank can use it to copy an effect from any player and reapply that to Feng. This works on the dot that's applied to the tanks in every phase of the encounter, as well as Epicenter, Arcane Resonance, Arcane Velocity. Anyone affected by the Lightning Fist with the stuns, which you'll see later on is very important, as well as Wild Flames, the channeled ability with the 30-second cooldown. The other one is Nullification Barrier. Again, 30-second ability. Basically, it can be dropped. Looks very similar to the Anti-Magic Zone from a Death Knight. And nullifies any damage to anyone standing inside of it. That is one thing that's very important. You got to make sure you're standing inside of it to gain the benefit. Now, for heroic mode, adds a whole new phase to the encounter, as well as instead of a predetermined phase switch, he does pick Spirit of the Staff, Spear, Shield, or Fist. And that happens at 100, 75, 50, and 25% on Heroic. Now, on Heroic, you can control what he gets first by positioning him. He will go to whichever is the closest, versus in normal mode, it's predetermined where he goes Fist, Spear, and then Staff. Here, we're going to get into a Heroic mode kill video, so we can kind of go over everything as it happens. Now, for us, we started out with, on Heroic, Spirit of the Staff. It's the highest damage phase. We use Bloodlust on the pull just so we can get out of this quicker. As you can see in the room, there are the two large rings. What we did is we used the inner ring for our ranged and healers to spread out along. This allowed spread of the Arcane Resonance. When it went out, it didn't wipe the raid. And upon the Arcane Velocities being cast, we collapsed on top of Feng. Players that are affected by Arcane Resonance would run to the outer ring until we collapsed, and when we collapse, you can kind of see them move back in towards that inner ring. Now, a couple important things with Arcane Velocity is Resonance typically follows immediately after a cast, so you do want to start spreading out with about a second to a second and a half left. Otherwise, a slow-moving player with Resonance will wipe the entire raid. During this phase, we use the Shroud of Reversal solely for tank damage and the Nullification Barrier to help deal with every other Arcane Velocity. I'll let Meows here go over anything that has to do with healing for the encounter.
We ran 7 healers. We had 2 dedicated tank healers, being a Disc Priest and a Holy Paladin. The others were 2 Resto Druids, a Resto Shaman, and a Holy Priest. The staff phase of the encounter is an incredible amount of damage to heal through. It's pretty straightforward to handle though. You can barrier every other velocity, which is what we did, and on top of that we stacked minor healing cooldowns, ancestral guidance, and the like. As far as the velocities that we did not barrier, we rotated all of our major raid-wide reductions like Diva Aura, Power Word Barrier. On top of that, you want to utilize your tranquilities and things to just stay on top of the healing because it's very easy to fall behind. So those cooldowns do need to be used at the beginning of each arcane velocity and not popped late. As far as the people with resonance, you do need to single target heal them. You can't just blanket the whole raid and hope the AoE healing keeps these people up. We had our Resto Shaman and Holy Priest focus these people with single target heals. Coming out of velocity, your raid will be very low, but you have a good amount of time to get everyone back up to being safe.
Okay, at this point you see us in Spirit of the Shield. This is the heroic only mode. Not a whole lot to say about this phase. I mean, he's got kind of like a chain lightning that inflicts shadow damage, but your raid's going to be stacked up here. Nullification Barrier needs to be dropped on top of the shield. When he throws it, it'll immediately wipe out the ads. Basically what happens is on 25 man he summons 10 souls. 10 man he summons 5. If any of these make it to the shield, they'll heal him for 5%. Basically early on, if a single one makes it. it's going to lead to a berserk wipe. Now, one thing you do want to have planned out is a couple DPS assigned if there is what we kind of refer to as runners that get out of the group, so they don't hit. Death Knight Scorpion's Grasp is absolutely amazing to group these up. They can be slowed, they can be knocked back, and we made utilization of those to avoid them from hitting. All we really did, we just stacked opposite side of wherever he threw his shield through the use of knockbacks and just AoE. They were very easy to bring down.
Healing in this part of the encounter is pretty minimal given the damage in the staff and spear phases. It pretty much boils down to having all of your AoE on the ground and triage healing the people who are hit by both the lightning and or the spirit bolts. Otherwise, damage is really very minimal, and you really want to be focusing your tanks during any movement to set up for, adds.
Now, here you can see our transition into the third phase, Spirit of the Fist. We went with this one next. Again, just to kind of continue to allow the healers to, somewhat regen. And what we did to deal with it is we stacked up behind him. We nullified every other one. And what you kind of saw right there is myself. I actually was running out and eating a Lightning Fist. You can see on Heroic, it does split into 3 bolts versus the one on normal. What happens is one player runs out, they eat the stun, and then your Shroud of Reversal is just going to copy that the stun, and you're going to use that as soon as he starts an epicenter to bypass one. Now, the epicenters that are barriered, you can see we stay stacked up. Whoever is handling these stuns, being the person stunned, you do want to run out with a second or two left on that, just because at times he would cast it immediately after nullification barrier, so you need to be in position, otherwise you won't have the stun for an epicenter.
Actually, coming into this phase, which would be the transition from shield to fist, is a great time to pop concentration pots if you're safe to do so. An alternative would be to just pop it during one of the stunned epicenters, because no one is taking any damage other than the tanks, and it's really just perfectly safe to get that mana back there and then. I would caution that the tanks are taking very high damage at this point. As part of the heroic difficulty, they take 5% increased damage per phase. So you do want, again, your dedicated tank healers and your other healers who, since they're not doing much of anything else other than regenning, rolling hots and other minor heals, to just make sure tanks don't take a large amount of damage with no heals in between. You do want to front load your heals for the epicenters that are barriered, as the barrier does not last as long as epicenter cast does. You will be eating the first 2 or 3 ticks. You just want to make sure you stay on top of it and keep people relatively high until the barrier is dropped, and then you can slowly top them back off. As for the person eating the stun, you do want a healer dedicated to making sure they get a large heal cast on that person following the stun, or there's a good chance they will either be gibbed by epicenter or spirit bolt if they're not topped off.
We also used raid-wide cooldowns like Power Word Barrier and Diva Aura on the epicenters that we barriered. Popped the second he started, and then we popped the barrier a little bit late. We went with Spirit of the Staff lastly, just because at this point you're going to be hitting the execute. It's the second most dangerous phase, so you do want the ability to cut it short. Now what we do is we move him here to the middle of the room, and we get the wildfire sparks outside of the raid. You want them all on the same side of the room, that way your raid isn't moving and losing DPS. Now the other important thing is you do want the barrier for the first and third draw flames if you do get them. However, you probably won't see a third one, and at that point you just want to burn through him. Again, a great time once he hits 20% to use Bloodlust or Heroism for anyone who died during the encounter.
The damage in the last phase is very similar to the first. It's not nearly as bad, and you do have quite a bit of downtime until the draw flames where you do not have the barrier. As far as that goes, it's basically boils down to blowing every raid-wide CD you have. We pretty much ran Ego Auras, Powered Barriers, Spirit Link Totem back to back to back to cover the entire AoE part of the Draw Flames. You want your cooldowns to last from beginning to end. If there's a gap where you don't have any, you will fall behind, and it's very possible you will wipe. Again, this is the area where I would encourage healers to use their healing steroids, pop Tranquilities, Healing Tide Totem, Divine Hymns, all of that as well, because damage is truly through the roof. And again, you cannot neglect the tanks. At this point, they're taking 20% increased damage, and the dot application will be quite a bit of burst damage on top of the melees.
Well, that wraps it up here for the Feng the Accursed guide. I hope this helped you guys out. If it did, definitely, thumbs it up. Give us a like, subscribe. We're going to be doing these videos. For right now, I think what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing them as we kill them on Heroic and do them as a both normal mode and Heroic. Thanks for watching.